Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Chanukah Sameach. Happy Chanukah. Fourth night of Chanukah. So midway, 4 out of 8 nights. And it also is a night that was coined in the Middle Ages as Nittel. Nittel is connected to events that transpired 2008 years ago. And this night was often for Jewish people a very dangerous night, being that it was considered the birthday of an individual that some people in this world designated as Son of God, and the name of that Jew, they killed many Jews. So it was a dangerous night in the Middle Ages, and there are even a custom not to study Torah this evening till midnight, because not to feed so-called energy of the negative energies that came out of the Jesus experience, basically. So this is not, I'm not here to criticize Christianity per se. Many of its beautiful qualities come from Judaism, obviously, but there are also many negative things that came out of it as well. And though Christianity has been tamed over the centuries, so we don't have an inquisition and crusades and pogroms, but anti-Semitism that lingers, and some even attribute the Holocaust, though the Nazis were by no means religious, but definitely in the climate of Christian anti-Semitism, it was much easier to convince 100 million Germans to kill the Christ killers, basically, as Jews have been designated and defined. So this night has some of that negative energy, and not to feed it is a custom by some, by Hasidim and by others, not to study Torah this evening. So you're wondering, so why are we sitting here and learning a class, a Torah class? So I have several reasons I was doing it. It is also because we do this every week. Not everybody is familiar with this custom. I didn't want to stop it. There were those Hasidim that tonight, instead of studying, play chess. Some in the olden days, yeshiva boys would use this evening to knit and sew up the patches and the holes in their pants and their shirts. And other ways of using this evening for constructive purposes, but not to, to in a sense, not to feed the spirits, the negative spirits that are maybe related to this time. Yet, as I said, on the other hand, since I give a class every Wednesday night, I felt I didn't want to stop that, especially for those, as I said, some of you that may not be familiar with this custom. And in addition, some say that the study of Chassidus, the inner dimension of Torah, is more powerful than all the negative spirits, so it's a form of maybe transforming the darkness into light. And therefore I chose this evening's topic to be your dark side. Your dark side.
And, do you personally believe that this night is connected to some dark spirits?
I don't think it's a matter of belief. The question is, why don't you ask me a better question? Do I believe in spirits altogether?
Okay, well, that is a...
Well, the answer is as follows. I do believe I do know, more than believe, that what we see and sense with our 5 senses is very little of reality. So what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears and taste, touch, and smell is superficial level of reality. So absolutely, not believe, but know with every part of me, I don't need faith for this, that there are forces and energy behind the surface in existence. Do you believe, for example, in subatomic particles? But you don't need belief. It's been demonstrated, and it makes sense. No one has ever seen subatomic particles. So yes, I definitely believe that there's a thing called a bad vibe and a good vibe, and that there are people who give off good energy, people who give off negative energy. I definitely think we can ourselves give off good energy and bad energy. So in the end context of that, yeah, absolutely. I think there are times of the year that have a more positive, more conducive. They don't control our lives, but there are what they call predispositions. There are times like that the environment is more conducive for something healthy, and there are times the environment is very not conducive for that. You know, there's a lot to do with that. So absolutely. I mean, I think that the energy flows of life are the main driving engine of almost everything that exists.
Yeah, but this question makes sense of that. So this night is, what is this night?
So look, if you accept that the Jewish sages had some wisdom, and over the centuries and years they felt that this night had some negative energy, I have no reason to not accept that. I'm not necessarily smarter than all those collective generations. I mean, this is not about just this night. This is about, for instance, in the Jewish calendar, you have the month of Av. There are 3 weeks when we fast. On Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the calendar. That also is considered to be negative energy. We don't make weddings then. Between Passover and Shavuos, we don't make weddings. So it's also the same idea that there are times where there is a certain, negative energy where you try to avoid overt celebrations, and that doesn't mean we lie down and die. It means our challenge then is to transform it into something that's positive and good. You know, let me continue this evening. Let's see. Okay, I don't want to get into a debate about this. So, the name Nittel, some say, means it's connected to a void, a vacuum. It comes from a Latin word. Some consider it's connected to the negative part of what I said this evening. It's interesting that also this year comes out of Chanukah. And it's also the pysche of Miketz, which all have one central theme: the transformation of darkness into light. Chanukah, of course, is obviously, that's the story of Chanukah, where due to the desecration and defilement of the temple and its vessels and
Oil?
including the oil, the Jews then were looking to rekindle after they won the battle. The Maccabees won the battle over the Greek Syrians. They were looking to rekindle the menorah. They did not find any oil until they found one crucible of oil, but which would only last for one, not even for one night, and instead it burned for 8. So in a state of darkness, they transformed it into light. And we too do so when we light the Chanukah menorah every night. We light it in the evening as the sun goes down, and we light it by the window or by the door, al pesach beisei mebachutz, in order to shine into the darkness of the night. All symbolic of the message of Chanukah, which is transforming darkness into light. In the story of the Torah chapter, the same story, you have Joseph, who was thrown into the pit and considered dead by his brothers, ends up in Egypt, thrown into prison. The end of last week's chapter. And in this week's chapter, he's pulled out of prison to interpret the dreams of Pharaoh. And like it says, that suddenly he came from nothing, from the lowest, he became a Mishnah Melch, he became a king, as it says in the book of Ecclesiastes. That he rose from the pits, he suddenly became the viceroy, the second in command, that turned Egypt into a superpower of its time. So there you see, too, the transformation from the darkest to the light. All the same central theme. So it's a good thing to focus on, that idea, there's light and then there's darkness, the light within darkness, so to speak. So the mystics explain that we do have 2 types of light. One is called direct light, and one is called indirect light. Direct light is any source of light that shines, gives off light. It can be the sun, it can be a flame, it can be a light bulb. They all give off light. But they explain that there's another type of light which does not radiate. It's hidden within and concealed within certain situation or circumstance. And in there's a lot of powerful light, and it's through our work that we reveal that light. And when that's revealed, it's considered to be even greater than the first light. Because the first light has its power. But we don't know whether the first light would be able to pierce the darkness. Light that comes from darkness, from a concealed state, has more power because it's an energy that was able to break out even of it being in prison. Which in psychological terms is also obvious. When people are blessed with different gifts and they live and they appreciate those gifts and they live up to them and they on the respective responsibility that gifts bring you, that bestow upon you, it's one thing. But there's another light that comes out of a person when they're in crisis that is always stronger and in a way more time-tested, more, you can say, the metal is tested in a much more powerful way when it comes out of a dark crisis situation. So when things are going good and a person behaves, you don't know what they'll be like when they're put under pressure. You know, like we now, in our own times, we are living also through, one could say, there's an ebb and flow, the cycle, and you could say now is a darker time in a way. Where just a year ago, we seem to be riding high financially, technologically. I mean, the confidence level, the amount of money that was generated in the last 15 years was unprecedented. And suddenly in the last few months, with an economic meltdown and a recession that is only getting worse from day to day. And what suddenly is exposed, the major flaws in our capitalistic systems. And of course, with the latest breaking news of greed and different scams and so on, which I'm sure is just the beginning of more to come, unfortunately, we see how fragile and how weak our foundations are. Whereas a year ago, no one would have noticed. A year ago, people were saying the economy was so sound, it was just humming along, housing was being built, and people who were not able to own houses were owning houses. Now it all comes crumbling down, much worse. And as they said, psychologists have measured and say have established that the pain of losing $1,000 for a person is stronger than the pleasure of gaining $1,000. Because, and the obvious reason for that is because we have a sense of entitlement. Sense of entitlement gives you a distorted sense that earning should be natural. Losing is unnatural. So when you earn, you expected it. When you lose, you're much more upset. So it's not like equal. Oh, I have pleasure from 1,000, now it's canceled out by the sadness of losing 1,000. This has been demonstrated. I read about it in several interesting articles. So we live in a time right now which you can say, though it's not the time of Chanukah per se, but the same idea that we are living in a challenging time. Now we shall see what people are really made of. And you suddenly see what people are made of when it comes to finances. And they say there's an expression, if you want to recognize the true personality of a person, you have to look b'kisei, b'kaisei, or b'koisei. In Hebrew, b'kisei means their pocketbook, how they behave when it comes to money. B'kaisei when they're angry, and b'koisei when they're drinking. So if you want to really see somebody, you don't look at normal times. You look at comes money. It comes to when they get provoked, and when they are drinking. So now we're in a time of crisis, and we shall see the true colors emerge. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, a woman, you don't know how strong she is. She's like a tea bag, because you don't know how strong she is until you put her into hot water. So a tea bag, when you look at a simple tea bag, it doesn't seem potent at all. It's just like a little paper bag with some leaves inside of it, shredded leaves. You have no idea. You put it into hot water, it suddenly comes alive. And if you like tea, I'm not a particular tea drinker, but I understand the concept. It sounds, I like the idea. And suddenly a brewed tea. So it's hot water that brings it out. It's the same thing with people. You put them in hot water, you find out how strong they are. Some people you find out how strong they are. Some people you find out how weak they are. So when there's no hot water, no pressure, you don't know. Which, by the way, is also a message of Chanukah. Chanukah is olive oil. The oil out of an olive also needs to be pressed. Hazayis, ein moitzi shamrei ad shekoichinei, say the Talmud says. An olive does not deliver, does not give oil until you press it. Pressing olives, it's a whole art. So the same is true with all of us, that your best comes out when you're pressured. Just as they say a diamond is pressurized carbon. The same thing with many other elements. Through a lot of pressure and heat, some of the most beautiful things emerge. And I would say the most beautiful things in life all came through, are preceded by some type of pressure. I would even go further, sometime of pain. Look at the most beautiful thing of all, the birth of a child. It never comes without pain. The pain of the mother's birth pains, and then the pregnancy pains, and all the challenges that come with that. The same as in our own lives. As you grow into an adult, we all have to go through certain awkwardness, certain, I would even say pain of adolescence, the growing pains of life. Creativity is a child of frustration. Any creative act, and the greater the creativity will always be preceded by a very deep form of frustration, confusion, loss. If you write or you any other type of art, always is preceded by some type of state like that. Because when something is transforming from one state to another, as the Kabbalists put it, between every yesh and yesh, you need to have an ayin in between. What that means is a yesh in Hebrew is a state of being, a state of itness. To bring something from one state of being to another state of being requires a transition. And that transition is always going to be one that it has some elements of some elements of loss, confusion, because you're changing states. If it's an extension of the previous state, then it's your comfort zone. If you want to get out of your comfort zone, reach another great level of height, there has to be some type of state where you are, what's the word that we're looking for? Not demoral, disorientation. Some type of disorientation, some type of loss before you go into the new state. So, for instance, when a butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, from the cocoon,
Metamorphosis.
and there was once a caterpillar, so the caterpillar has to go through a state almost of death before it metamorphosizes into a butterfly. The caterpillar is living its life, and then it enters into its cocoon. And as the cocoon closes in, the butterfly, the caterpillar is definitely thinking it's dying. Darkness. It's engulfed in darkness. Only to emerge as a beautiful butterfly. And the same is true with every form of transition. So when we look at it at face value, that moment in between is going to be a very dark state. It's going to be a state of a void, a vacuum. When in truth it could be actually the birthing of a greater light. Now, it is in those times, as I said, when you can see the best and the worst in people. Now is the time when we will see whether we have leaders or we don't have leaders. Now we all know we don't have many leaders, and that's why you don't have many people offering any visionary approaches to the crisis that we're in. You have firefighters, you have administrators, you have people who know how to put out a fire and maybe find some short-term solutions. But long-term required maybe a rethinking of the whole economic model. I wrote in my last week's article that with the scandal that broke, the 50 billion or whatever the ultimate number will be, what it exposed, and this is not the only time, but exposed it in such a unprecedented numbers that it's impossible to ignore. It's not $1 million. The ripple effect is so enormous that it's hard to imagine. It's like literally $50 billion have suddenly left the bank accounts of many people, many of them givers and so on, in addition to the full recession. So the question really is, this whole concept called Wall Street is based on what? What kind of model is this? What kind of model? So just to put things into context. Remember, as they say, that we've been through 3 revolutions. There was the agricultural revolution, there was the industrial revolution, the computer revolution. So before the industrial revolution, what was the major primary way of making money? It was mostly through selling produce. The thing that people need most is food for sustenance. So therefore most people lived in a farm or around the farm. These are agrarian society, because the farm was the source of sustenance. So you went, let's say, and you were you needed to buy tomatoes and bread. So he went to a farmer, if you live with a farmer, and said, look, how much do you want? He said, if it cost him, let's say, 10 cents a tomato to produce, to grow, and all his costs, he sold it to you for 20 cents, just for argument. So there's a certain checks and balance, built-in checks and balance in this economic transaction. I give you, you give me something of that value, supply and demand. I pay you for it. You make some extra money. You start charging me too much, I'll go to another farmer. You know, there's a certain amount you can charge for a tomato. There's certain reality checks that keep people honest in these transactions. Then came the next stage where the middleman. No longer do you buy the tomato straight from the farmer. You buy it from a middleman. The farmer sells a lot of tomatoes. Once, this was when industrialization began. Mass production. So he doesn't just produce 1,000 tomatoes a year, but he produces 1 million tomatoes. So what happens is, now there's so many tomatoes, he can't afford to sit around and wait till everybody comes and buys individual tomatoes. So he sells them all to some type of middleman, who in turn becomes the retailer. That's wholesale retailer. So now the farmer's making a little money, the store's making a little money, and you can easily find all the tomatoes whenever you want in a supermarket. Then the industrial revolution came into play, where mass production became so common that many more middle levels were created. Now, of course, production also went down with industrialization, so the tomato ended up costing less than 10 cents because you don't have to labor all day under the sun to harvest your farm. So the industrialization. And now the detachment between the consumer and the producer is very far. It can be thousands of miles away, with maybe 4 or 5 middlemen in between. But because production is in such volume and so quick, it's still affordable. Then came someone, at some point, who created a new concept called Wall Street. Wall Street, you no longer have a connection between a product and a consumer and a producer and a product of value. You're giving your money to somebody who you so-called trust that they're going to go to a lot of farms and producers. When I say farms, I mean metaphorically now, any type of producer, and decide how much it's worth to invest. And essentially, it's a sophisticated casino where there's gambling going on, but it's not called gambling because these companies are supposed to be making money, but it's all built on a few premises, which is that there's trust. You see, when you have a farmer and you don't trust him, he's starting to charge you for rotten tomatoes, you don't go back. You look at the tomato, I'm not eating these tomatoes. Once you have middlemen, and you don't even know what the product is, because anyone investing basically in let's say, mutual funds, or definitely with these investment firms, has no idea even what companies are being traded. I mean, you can look at your statement, but that's why you're paying people percentages that they should know. So it's all built on you trusting them to trust someone else, So all these middle stages now, suddenly the weak link is exposed. Because you're not just dealing with a product that has value. Like what value does Wall Street offer? What benefit and value does Wall Street offer the world? Only one thing: profits. With the F, not profits, PhD. Money. Which is really essentially greed. Now that's fine. Greed is kept in check when there's a certain checks and balances between producer and consumer and producer. So you have a breeding ground called Wall Street of potential terrible corruption. The answer we always had was, that's why we have the SEC, we have regulators, and that are making sure that the trust is upheld. But what happens when the whole regulation breaks down? The trust breaks down. The people that you thought you can trust your whole life savings are not trustworthy. Then Wall Street has impossible for it to survive. And I'm wondering whether anybody's thinking on that level, or this is too radical to just close down an entire industry that's for the last 150 years become so much part and has generated so much money. Now this is not money based on benefit of product. This is, as I said, it's 5 steps in between with another few added that are just people betting on companies. And as I said, without trust and regulation, I don't see how it could stand. So if Mr. Madoff, who was trusted by his own family and his own colleagues, if he can't trust him, the question is, who could you trust? A stranger? Someone came now to you and you had the money, Would you put $1 billion, $1 million with someone? Who knows what he's doing? So it's interesting how this is going to evolve. I will say, however, speaking now as a Jew on Chanukah, on this night of Nittel, on this, as I said, the dark side of things, that everything is a transition. If this situation today should expose the real flaws of our economic system, the flaws that even Karl Marx in his good time exposed, even though he had no alternative, because socialism didn't work, communism for sure not, but his critique was very accurate. His critique was exactly, in different words, what I just said. His critique was that the alienation that is created when the employee is disconnected from the product that he's producing. Because remember, besides the alienation that I mentioned, you no longer meet the person who's producing the benefits that you're buying. Another thing, all the people working today, when you work, very few of us are even seeing the benefits of our produce. When you worked on a farm, at the end of the day you came home, you say, this is what I accomplished. You saw your hands, your toil was directly linked to the rewards. Today the reward is I give you money. I don't care what you don't have, it's not your business what is actually being produced. This is also a breeding ground for a lot of corruption and also for not caring. Most workers do not really care of the success of the product itself because it's not their product. They're just paid to do a job, someone else's product. You're just being paid for your time and for your energy, which has to create certain psychological alienation. But I'm not a Marxist, and I don't want anyone to get that impression, even tonight. But there are certain virtues when you read Marx to understand that our economic system today, though Marxism didn't work, our economic system has a lot to go through, and maybe this will be a true wake-up call. This would be, to me, a real visionary change in our whole economic outlook. That ultimately, yes, if there is no money based on, it's interesting, America has, "In God we trust," engraved on the currency. Money being the epitome of ego, epitome of self-worship, of power. "In God we trust." There's a certain wisdom to that. Money, without "In God we trust," will not have trust in other people. In other words, if you don't have a God-fearing person, if you don't have a person who understands that money is only a means to be able to help others, you can't trust that person. I don't care whether they caught cheating or not caught cheating, because fundamentally they're just potential cheaters. Just the day will come when they will cheat you, because fundamentally, what really stops them from cheating? Fear of being caught. They're smart. Here's a man that outsmarted the whole system for who knows how many years. The only way you can really trust someone is if you know that they are answering to a higher cause, and that's proven in their actions, in their behavior. In other words, this climate of success is built on making a lot of money. In itself is not trustworthy. Can you trust someone that's driven just to make money? Yeah, you're selfish yourself. You say, listen, if he's making money and he's going to make me money, that's all I care about. Someone wrote to me in response to my last week's email that I invested with Mr. Madoff, and you cannot say, because I wrote there that can we really be compassionate? Should we be compassionate to those that invested? Because they sure didn't complain when they were making money on other people's backs. So someone wrote to me, not many of us were not making money on other people's backs. And she's right, they weren't. But let's be honest, here's my question. If you knew that the person you invested with, there was something suspicious, and you were suspicious that he was making a lot of money for you by stealing from others, not out of their pockets. He's learned to manipulate the system. Would you pull your money out? I'd love to hear how many would actually pull their money out if it wasn't them. Here it ended up being that he was ripping them off. Because when you see consistent returns that were not natural, it has to arouse some suspicion. So he's either stealing from someone else. You didn't think he was stealing from you. And that nobody really cared about, as long as they were making money. That's called a climate. Now, I'm not in any way exonerating or saying that Mr. Madoff is not guilty, but he's not the cause of our problems. It's a climate that is driven by one thing and one thing only, making money, money, money. And I know all of us would love to be in that situation, making a lot of money, but you have to remember there's a great curse that comes with it if it's not tamed by a higher authority. So to go back to our discussion here, the times in which we live is also an example of a darker time that can have ultimately reveal a deeper light if we learn our lessons, and this exposes what happens to people who don't have a higher consciousness, and materialism becomes their entire focus. But I want to bring it back to the psychological, to our personal lives. Because all this, as you know, there's microcosm, macrocosm. We live in a world where everything happening in the larger world is also happening inside of ourselves. Which makes it so, therefore, so meaningful. Because it means, even if you can't change the world, you can change yourself. So we too have in our own lives also stages when we are in the light, and stages when there's darkness. So on a simple level, it means our moods. I'm sure everyone here knows that there are times that you're in a good mood, good spirits, when you're up and optimistic. And then there are darker times in our lives. Times when things aren't going well, we get depressed, aimless, despondent. So we also have these two mood swings. And this is part of the human condition. We don't stay in the same place. As one of the Rebbes said, he said it actually about parnasa, making a living. Life is like a turning wheel, he said, like a Ferris wheel. Never be so cocky and confident when you're on top because the wheel turns. And never be completely depressed when you're in the bottom because the wheel also turns. So it's a turning wheel. Galgal hachezeh is the expression. A spinning wheel. And it's about understanding and appreciating the cycles of life more than becoming obsessed with the state of being in which you are at that point. So what I mentioned earlier, the yesh, ayin, yesh, that you're in a state of being, and every transition will go through a painful state, a disorienting state, a state of confusion, loss, preparing you for another state. If you're aware of that, then you understand it's a journey. It is a journey. The thing is, we get stuck, and we want to, in static situations. When things are a certain way, we just want to hold on to it, and we don't realize life moves. If you could align yourself with the mobility and cycles of life, you'd see that everything else would take on a different shape. This is what real life is about. And I keep using an example of my own grandchild because I'm watching a new life emerge. Newborn children, before they've been tainted and contaminated by us adults, I'll give you the perfect example. Is there such a thing as a newborn child that's in a bad mood? I'd like you to know. The children are only in a bad mood if the adults around them are in a bad mood. Now, this doesn't mean they may not have pain. They have indigestion, they could get a cold, they can have constipation, they could have other things that are health-related. That's not a bad mood, that's a health situation. So, of course, they're crying and they're in pain. But as far as moods go, where do moods really develop? Because children naturally go with the flow. There's a cycle. There's a cycle that's natural. It's when they begin to pick up the impressions and the attitudes of the people around them, then they learn there's a thing called moods. I'm in the mood, I'm not in the mood, I like it, I don't like it. Egos are bruised. Children also don't have egos in that sense. Children don't have, bottom line is what children don't have is self-consciousness. That's why a child is not ashamed when it comes out of its mother's womb and it's naked. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Its body, its soul, its whole being, personality is a pure personality. We become aware of our sexuality. As soon as you become aware of yourself, that's when everything goes downhill. Self-awareness or self-consciousness that we think is such a beautiful thing to be self-conscious, actually is not so. As soon as you're conscious of something, it means there's a subject and an object. True seamlessness is when you're in the moment. You don't even feel and distinguish between you and the experience. We've all had that. Sometimes you're immersed in something you really like. There's a point where you're not even aware that you're in it. That's the beauty of it. And then suddenly you stop and say, I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten in like 6 hours. That means you're out of the zone. This happens to all of us. When you get immersed in something such a point where you don't distinguish between yourself and the experience, that's where the subject and object melt into one. That's true experiences. That's when true expertise shines. That's when we are in the zone, as they say. And this is true for everyone and it's actually the most powerful place to be. The problem is we can't hold on to it because we do live in a world of a fragmented world where there's you and your experiences. People who have that type of presence, wherever they are one with their experience, are people who are at peace with themselves. They're not second-guessing themselves. As young children, we are there naturally. So children, this whole idea of moods and stuff like that is something that is a part of the human. I'm not blaming us. because it is part of life. It's part of also being mistreated by others. Remember, if you were surrounded with people who were seamless themselves, you would never have to go through any type of ups and downs in that sense. Not because there's no ups and downs in life, but because, as I said before, you swim. You realize it's a journey. So as we grow older, what happens is that heartbeat, that mobility that a child has slows down, and now your life becomes a composite of many static experiences. So we say, are you really going with the flow through the day? I would say most of us are. It's a composite. It's a sum of a bunch of fragments. That's what our lives end up being. With a few moments, we are in it, completely in it. But the rest of it, it's almost like you and the rest of the world, two separate entities. So therefore, what happens is, when you're in a bad situation, that becomes your static place. I'm in a bad mood now. You can't talk to me, type of thing. Whereas in truth, a person would be able to align themselves and say, listen, I'm just going through this is like a journey. Now I've come to one place in the journey where I have to go slower or I have to travel with caution. Perfectly fine. That's what the darker moments are like. So life, therefore, is a long journey that has, times you go through light, sometimes you go through darkness. And like a car driving, the daylight is maybe you drive with the daylight, but at night you have headlights. And then you drive through the dark a little more carefully. But nevertheless, you compensate with lights. And you continue the journey until the day comes again. So we all have our dark and our light times, and therefore the lessons of Chanukah, of Joseph in this week's chapter, are obvious, which is that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and more importantly, there's light within the tunnel, which means there's a deeper light in the darkness, as I said, that through crisis and through challenge can bring out the greatest strengths within us. But let's go a step further than that. This isn't just about the dark moments of our moods, of our lives, but there's also another thing. There's a certain darkness that all of us carry all the time. So we're going to take a little journey into the wild side, the dark side of the moon. So, how many of you are familiar with your dark side? Let's start with that. Very familiar. Okay. So it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. We really don't talk about our dark side much. It's their own little private place. The dark side, sometimes it's an ugly side. It comes with shame. Definitely things that are not so proud. Often it's related to sexual stuff. But people have their fantasies, their thoughts, their private, intimate little secrets. Sometimes it's thoughts, sometimes it's actions. Everybody's got their secret little life. And the world in which we live, which, as I said, is not a seamless world, where what you see is what you get. So you can go on living on your cover story, so to speak, the script of your outer life that people are familiar with. And beneath it all, there can be this one subscript or subplot that is a little seedier or darker or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it pops its head not so often. Sometimes it's there all the time with us. So we're not doing here a confessional tonight, even though it's some people are confessing this evening. But to talk about the dark side is very much part of Judaism. But we talk about it to ourselves, and most importantly, to be aware of it. This is not, we do know, we're told, that God knows, Talumas Liba, knows the secrets of the heart, knows the innermost secrets of every heart. And sometimes you think to yourself when you're in your dark place, your dark side, does anyone see me here? It would be quite embarrassing. I sometimes think, my father died a few years ago, I sometimes think just like, he sees me at all times. When he was around on this earth, I didn't want him to see everything. Like none of us want everything to be seen, right? So, there's also God, and there's our people we respect. There's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, our rebbes, our teachers, our mentors. Their spirits, they see. So if we really knew they were seeing, I'm sure it would be a little of a deterrent. The fact that we continue what we do, we either say either they don't see, or the way they see, they'll forgive us because, they're not on this earth anyway. As like Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai, the great sage, said on his deathbed to his students, Halavai, May it be. May you fear God as much as you fear human beings. And this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, a great, great sage, speaking to sages. And he's telling them this. So where are we? So where do we stand? He's telling them that the fact is we are concerned what others think about us, but we do not have the same type of fear when it comes to heaven, to God, because, as I said, either it's abstract and invisible, and we don't really think that God sees us in this place, or we think He's so lofty that He sees us. Who cares? He doesn't really. It's not like it can be bad for your reputation because you won't tell anyone and won't announce it. So, but we all have that darker side. Now, in Freudian psychology, in modern psychology, that dark side called the id is a very ugly beast, actually, that's driven by selfishness and narcissism and basically survival, and and your own survival at the expense of others. And people will do all kinds of things. Ich habe schon gegeben mein Akdome wegen Nittel. Nacht. So this is a Nittel style class. So what people will do, that inner beast, that dark place, is unspeakable. Hopefully we should never be tested. But we've seen what people can stoop to do. People have been seen to turn to cannibalism, literally, to participate in the most cruel acts. I remember in high school we all read the book, the short story called The Lottery. Right? You remember that short story? So it's I mean, you have to read it till the end. I don't want to spoil the punchline, but since we're all out of high school, I might as well tell it. So I won't. The Lottery. It was a short story. One of these books we read. The Lottery was this city that had a strange custom. Once a year, everybody would dress up. And it builds up. Would dress up, and people would prepare for weeks ahead, and they'd buy beautiful food. But it looks like they're going to prepare for a celebration, for some type of special event. You don't know the special event until the last paragraph of the story. So I'll just jump to that. But just remember, the rest of the story is all the build-up. And you think, what, kind of special, some special celebration. And what happens is the big day comes. In this town, they have a custom that they throw lots, and whoever it falls out on, they stone that person alive. And that day is a day of celebration. It's a book to teach you how conformity, how custom can suddenly become cruel. And I'm sure you've read Lord of the Flies and the other books that all show you how people, under certain circumstances, even children, can turn to being very cruel. So there's a lot of strong evidence that can be made to support the Freudian thinking that the dark side in a person is a driving force. As I just gesagt habe, we give a Nittel Hagdome, Nittel. I see you came a little later to a stickel Shinui, wie sagt man das? Kalachiyad, huh? Yeah. So, an argument can be made that the dark side of a person is the true side. And the rest, as Freud would put it, is the ego, the superego that we impose to coexist, to look good. We all have a sense that we want to look good. You don't want your ugly side to show. And hundreds of books have been written. I just mentioned Lord of the Flies. The Portrait of Dorian Gray from a good old dude, Oscar Wilde. So, Portrait, same thing. You know the story? The story basically is this guy who makes a deal with the devil that he will never age. Instead, a painting is made of him, and the painting ages. So as he so-called gets freed from any effects on his life of his actions, he becomes more and more corrupt because there are no consequences. He's not aging. He's not suffering. And the painting gets more and more grotesque as time passes because the painting is actually absorbing all that. So the crueler person he becomes, and he becomes a very cruel person that continues to live and torturing people, and he's sadistic and all of that. And the painting up in the attic is getting uglier and uglier. And the final end of the book is that he goes up to the painting. He's so curious to see what he really looks like. And he sees the painting so ugly he takes a knife to the painting because he can't stand looking at it. It's so disgusting because his face looks like what he really became, a monster. As he cuts up the painting, of course, the deal is over. He dies as well because the painting was supposed to be him. It's just the idea. I mean, it's a fiction, but the idea that people, what will they do if there are no consequences? How bad can a person be? So there's a big case that many philosophers and thinkers have said. You give a person no consequences, they will turn into absolute sadistic animal. How many of you agree with that?
So scharbe einisch by uns.
Okay, so that's the term also, right? Yeah. So, and as I said, I could say that a lot of our modern society is built on this principle, and therefore different deterrents and stuff like that. So what is the Jewish picture of this? As I said, we all have a dark side. There's no doubt about it. We all have a dark side, an ugly side, a side to be ashamed of, a side that you don't want anyone seeing. You don't even like seeing it at times. Sometimes when you see it, you're also disgusted by it. Everyone has that side to themselves. But in Jewish thought, as I said before, darkness, is not an end in itself. It's a form of inverted light, basically, concealed light, like a black hole. And the darker something is, we say the more power it has. However, the power is concealed. So the message of Chanukah and the message of this chapter in the Torah, Joseph, is all about how from darkness comes extreme light. In many ways, this evening as well, as I mentioned before, called Nittel, is the darker side, and that's why there's custom by some not to study. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that God doesn't exist tonight. It just means you have to find the light in a deeper way. And studying Torah sometimes is too revealed. It says that it gives Yanikas Achatzenim, it feeds the negative energies, as I mentioned earlier. But as I said, since we're here and I give this class every week, I didn't want to stop it. So I decided that the little chassidus, which in a way, Ein Makabel Tumah, there's certain dimensions of the Torah that may be more powerful even than. I'm not giving here a psak halacha to anybody. I'm just saying that there's sometimes you can perhaps use a deeper strength that even, you see, Jesus didn't learn chassidus or Kabbalah. So perhaps that's something where it doesn't give him any strength. So to go back to our dark side, Judaism teaches Yetzer Leva Adam Ra Min Urav. That's what it says in chapter Noach. That the Yetzer Hara, what does the Yetzer Hara mean? The evil inclination. Yetzer Leva Adam. There's a side of the heart that's Ra Min Urav. That's evil from childhood, from young.
Huh? Youth.
Yeah. So there clearly is a statement to be made that there's a certain dark side that each of us has within us. But remember, this is the second chapter in the Torah. In the first chapter, in Bereshis, it says that every human being was created with Tselem Elokim, the image of God. So how do you reconcile these two? So some commentaries say that Noach, the chapter is already talking after the flood, and it's talking about after the destruction, after you saw Kishachas Kala, the whole earth was destroyed. So clearly the evil side of people came out. But what happened with the Tselem Elokim, with the image of God that we learned that human being was born with? Did that change? So it's interesting that Christianity actually, it's one of their mistakes, and I would say distortions, of understanding the story of Chet Eitzadas, the story of the tree of knowledge. They have the concept of original sin. In Judaism, there's no such thing as original sin. What is the concept of original sin? Their mind, and their way they interpret it is that once Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, a certain contamination entered this earth, which is also Jewish thought. But this contamination took over, and now this earth became an evil place. The devil, more powerful than God on earth. And the only way to redeem yourself from that is to believe in a certain Jew, which is the connection to this evening. I always found it a little, if it wasn't so tragic and humorous, it could have been any one of us. I mean, since I'm a Jew, I know believing in a Jew is not going to redeem any of your sins, that I can tell you. But a big part of this world decided that that's the case. They believe in us and Jews as God, or at least one Jew. And in a way they feel there's no salvation without believing in that Jew. It's like unbelievable. Why? Because the earth on its own doesn't have the ability to free itself. This is antithetical and wrong, absolutely. Torah teaches that yes, Zuma, which is the poison, the toxins of the Eitz Hadas entered into this world. To the extent that the Talmud even says that the three people would not have died. The only reason they died was because of Ite Shel Nachash, the bite of the serpent. Which means
3 or was it 4?
I think the Gemara Baba Basra thinks
I think it's 4.
Could be. I think in one place maybe it says 3, one place 4. And it means that they had no sin of their own. They had nothing that they did wrong. It was only as a result of those toxins. But the Talmud also says that by Matan Torah, by Mount Sinai, Paska Zumasa, which means that this toxin ceased to flow. That's clear proof that they're not part and parcel and inherent into creation. But after the Jews built the golden calf, the Zohar says the Chazra Zumasa, that the toxins returned. So clearly, through human actions, we have the ability to affect it. And this comes down to human responsibility. It's not through the belief in any human being that you will be redeemed, but it's through your actions. So yes, the tree of knowledge changed the course of history, but the Tzelem Elokim was not hidden. It was concealed rather, but it was not annihilated. So it's true, now we have the battle. We have two voices inside of us, the dark side and the divine side. In Tanya he calls it the Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Habamis. The divine soul, the animal soul. Sometimes called Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. The good inclination, the bad inclination. The right side of the heart, the left side of the heart. Just for the record, people ask sometimes, what's the difference between Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Habamis, animal soul and divine soul, and between the Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara? Are they just synonyms? They're not synonyms. As you may know, if you don't, a soul consists of 10 faculties. Chachma Bina Das, Chesed, Vura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chayid, Yesod, Malchus. 3 intellectual faculties and 7 emotional ones. So both the animal soul has 10 faculties. They're all the 10 faculties, your mind and heart, are all driven for self-preservation, like an animal. And there's the 10 faculties of the divine soul, where the mind and the heart are all driven toward divine purposes, toward higher calling. When you say Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, you're talking about the 7 emotions of the Nefesh Elikis, would be the Yetzer Tov. So the Nefesh Elikis is all 10 faculties. When you say Yetzer Tov, you're referring only to the 7 emotions. And same thing, Yetzer Hara, you're talking about the 7 emotions of the animal soul, as a footnote. So, going back to the point, therefore, from a Jewish perspective, we have the divine image that remains always intact. But it is countered by and it is faced with the darker side. So therefore, the whole psychology of Freud and modern psychology that dismisses or relegates a person to being nothing more than a beast, that has the power to superimpose certain nice behavior, is not consistent, is antithetically unacceptable to the Torah's perspective. From the Torah's point of view, the divine image is the driving force of a human being. Unfortunately, it can get concealed, it can get hijacked by the darker side. But that is only one part of the story. That we all have ultimately a beauty inside of us, no matter what happens. And no matter how concealed it becomes, it's still there. But what happens with the dark side? What's supposed to happen with it? So you would make the argument, a very simple argument, that the battle of life is between choosing good over evil, choosing virtue over selfishness. And so that's it. Win the battle, and you've fulfilled your purpose in life. If all of us win the battle, we bring Mashiach to the whole universe, and it says, "Ruach hatuma avim min haaretz," and God will erase all the tuma, all the zuma, all the toxins that came from the beginning of time will disappear. Talmud says, "Shchitas Yetzer Hara," God will also slaughter the Yetzer Hara. That seems like the normal approach, which is quite, I would say, quite an achievement, because we all know there's a battle between good and evil. We categorically reject the approach that the dark side is more powerful than the light side. Just a question whether you and I will embrace it and keep fighting until we win this battle. What's interesting is, from a Torah point of view, that's not sufficient. And that's what brings us to this night. From a Torah point of view, it's not just good enough that good will win over evil, and that light will prevail over darkness. Why? Because who created the darkness? Who created the concealment in the first place? Who created the Yetzer Hara? The one above. As a matter of fact, the Talmud says, and here too the Talmud in Bavli says 3, and the Yerushalmi says 4, that there are 3 things that God created and regretted. 3 things that God created. One of them is the Yetzer Hara. God created this evil inclination in the shape of the serpent, the Nachash HaKadmoni, and then God regretted it, which is an interesting Talmud. If you regret it, just so destroy it. What do you mean, create? And why would, what's going on here? God creates and He regrets? What, we have to suffer? God didn't understand what He's creating here. So, we also say, in the evening prayer, we say, Yetzer Er u'Barach Cheshach, that God shaped the light and created the darkness. So we see the darkness, serpent, the Yetzer Hara, are all divine creations. It's true that we're still responsible for our behavior because you don't have to act on it. Just because God instilled in you a Yetzer Hara doesn't does not exonerate you, and does not free you from the responsibility to act on it. But as the Zohar says, it's a test. The Zohar actually uses a strong example of a king who wanted to test his own child. So he sends certain temptations his way just to test him. And when that temptation comes and is successful, it cries. Because it was never, it says, Satan, Pnina of Satan's L'Shem Shemayim is Kab. The Satan, which is another form of the Yetzer Hara, never is a messenger of God's. God says, this angel I'm sending to do a good deed, and this angel I want you to tempt the person, challenge the person. And when the angel is successful, it is extremely sad, because it was never meant, it was only meant to reveal the greater strengths. Imagine someone wants to test you, and and you fail the test. So the one who's testing you is not happy with the result, even though he fulfilled his mission. There you too see the regret element. So it's God that put all of this. That's why in Jewish thought, it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient to just good winning over darkness, over evil, and good and light over darkness. But we have to also transform the darkness, which is an amazing concept. You could say, if good is winning already, forget the darkness. Let it stay there wherever it was. The Yetzer Hara, let it remain where it is. You see in last week's chapter, a few weeks ago's chapter, that when Jacob crossed over the river with his family, he returned al pachim ketanim. He forgot the final little details. And the Talmud says that a tzaddik is chasat. Tzaddik cares even about shava pruta, even things that are minute, because there's divine sparks in it. So from a Jewish perspective, redemption of the world is not just enough that we vanquish the enemy, but you have to transform the enemy. So you have the concept of called iskafia, which means to control yourself, not to give in to the negative. And then there's a concept called ishapcha, to transform the negative into the positive. And it's amazing because you see, with all that Jews have suffered through history, you think they should just be relieved that they don't have enemies anymore. It's not enough. The enemies have to turn into allies. That's the ultimate purpose. And if that's not achieved, we really have not fulfilled the purpose of existence. So that's why you have, in the Shema, we say like this: V'haftas Hashem Elokecha. You shall love God. With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might or power, or the Talmud says with your money, tell that to the investment bankers. But the Talmud asks him, why does it say b'chol levavcha? It should have said b'chol libcha. In Hebrew, your heart is one base, lev. So the Talmud says b'chol levavcha, b'shnei yitzurecha. Both sides of your heart, with both the evil, the positive, the good inclination and the evil inclination. How do you serve God with your evil inclination? What does it mean b'shnei yitzurecha? That's the concept of transformation. It means that even, as I said, Baruch Cheshach, the Yetzer Hara, the sun, and all divine creations. They're all divine creations, they have a purpose. Our job is not just not to be tempted by them, but to actually turn them into allies. So it says in the Talmud in Sanhedrin, that when Mashiach comes, the Nachash, that serpent that caused all the problems of life and history, death in the world, was brought by the serpent, will become a Shamish Gadol, will become a great Shamish, a great supporter, a great assistant. Because it's again the concept of transformation. So how do you transform a Yetzer Hara? How do you transform darkness? It's one thing avoiding darkness. It's winning over darkness, bringing light into a dark room. So the answer, there are many answers, but the psychological one is the very most obvious one of all. Look at people who've gone through the fire, who've hurt, who've been in pain. Those that grow through it achieve a dimension of refinement and awareness and insight that can never be achieved by someone who did not go through that darkness. So though the Yetzer Hara per se is something we have to avoid, but once a person has fallen and they learn to do tshuva, tshuva means to return from there, they return not just intact as if before you went in, then it's not enough, because then it wasn't worth it. If you return and just say, okay, you know what, I made a mistake, no more mistake, I will never do it again. From a Jewish point of view, that's not good enough. Because what about all the time that the mistake was that? The mistake has to be turned now into a positive. That the rest of your life, your mistakes have taught you something that change you and everyone around you forever and ever. So the things we learn through our darkest moments should turn us into giving off a light that only we can give off, because we learned what we learned through that experience. In Tanya, he puts it this way in chapter 7. He says that there's two types of tshuva. There's a tshuva me'ira, there's a tshuva that you do out of fear, and there's a tshuva ma'ava that you do out of love. So he says, the Talmud says that when you do tshuva only out of fear, meaning fear of punishment or so on, then the tshuva only helps from here on. It does not wipe, it wipes away the past, but it's only from here on. Whereas you do tshuva from Ava, from love, it's tshuva me'ikara l'mafreya, it also changes the past. It transforms the past into a future. As the expression of the Talmud, zdeinis nasalei kezachis. Zdeinis, intentional malicious sins become like mitzvahs. How's that possible? You could say you wipe out a sin, you regret a sin, you destroy a sin. But how could a sin become a mitzvah? So he answers in Tanya, because who is more passionate? Who appreciates water more? The person who drank water or the thirsty one? That comes from Eretz Tzia of Oyev. You know, Tzom l'chanafshi. That my heart is, my soul is thirsty. The thirsty one has a much deeper passion when they drink water than someone who's never been thirsty. So the Baal Tshuva, the person who does Tshuva, in a real passionate Tshuva with love, their thirst itself becomes their catalyst for the greatest achievement, because they don't take it for granted. So there you have a sin, not the sin itself. The sin, God forbid, the sin has to be shvirasan, zui takanasan, which means the sin itself, the negative thing, has to be destroyed. But the energy that is in there is released, and now is turned into being a beacon of light that can never have, a light that can never have come from someone who was just doing it naturally. It's like when a person runs for their life, they run with a lot more strength than someone who just never had to run for their life. People who suffered have a passion in them that people who have not do not have. God forbid no one should suffer. But once one has, that's the redemption. So the Gemara, the Talmud puts it, Matzoye shehitzila be'isur hitzila beheter. That there's a story of the Talmud about a prostitute who ultimately was not just enough that she did tshuva and stopped being what she was, but she actually turned what she had learned into a very holy type of love. And there are many examples where the Talmud explains and the Torah explains what transformation of darkness into light is. Just last night I was on a radio show with Joey Reynolds. You could hear it's online. And he shared with me that he's a recovering addict, substance abuse. He destroyed his family, he destroyed his life. And he said, when I finally came to it through the 12-step program and I realized I have to surrender to higher power, my whole life I became a life of service. I'm on the radio now, my whole life is helping other people. And he would never have done this. He may have been an investment banker ripping off other people legally or whatever. This only came out of that darkness. And he doesn't forget one moment of his life that this is what he has to do. There's no question it came through his dark moments. Now, of course, if he had the choice, he wouldn't have phoned there. Many times people wonder when they're doing great things, if I hadn't suffered, would I have been at this place? Someone just told me the other day, I think I would have been a mediocre person had my parents been healthy. I became someone not mediocre. I couldn't afford to be mediocre and complacent in a house where the fire was burning. And there are many, many examples of this. The things we learn, the experience you learn when you've fallen. So your dark side, as ashamed as you may be of it, it's true that one thing is to make sure to remember that your light and you're telling me your divine image is more powerful than your dark side. But remember, your dark side can also feed certain things. I remember, I'm not a Trekkie from Star Trek, but in Star Trek, one of the shows, so you have Captain Kirk, goes through some type of machine or whatever, where it splits his good side and his bad side. And you have two Captain Kirks. The good one is the logical one, reflective, but is indecisive. And doesn't have, I'm sorry, not indecisive, it doesn't have fire. His bad side is very, very insecure and fearful, but has a passion to it. And you see how the strength that we all need, also a dark side in a way. You just know how to balance it too. Your dark side can be a very powerful force. Number one, that if you realize that it was also put there by God. I said, why does it say Yetzirah? Yetzirah means shape and form, because light has shape and form. Darkness is a void. So you can't call it Yetzirah. It's not a tzura, it doesn't have a shape. But bar it is, it's an entity. As a matter of fact, there are two opinions in Jewish philosophy, whether darkness has substance or it's only the absence of light. There was a chassid, they tell a story, who came in to hear a Maimer Chassidus, a discourse of Chassidus from his Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek. But he came in middle, or when the Rebbe had already begun speaking. And the room was packed. So he had nowhere to stand. So he stood at a place where he was standing between the light, the lamp, and the Rebbe. And his shadow was cast on the Rebbe. He was a little uncomfortable, but he said, I want to hear what the Rebbe has to say, so, nowhere else to stand. In the middle, the Rebbe's eyes were closed the whole time. But everyone saw his shadow, it was a little weird. He's standing and his shadow is on the Rebbe. In the middle of the discourse, the Rebbe says that darkness does not have substance of its own, so it cannot be transformed. Meaning, he was basically suggesting that the shadow, because later the Chassid said, the reason I decided to stand is because I wanted the Rebbe to elevate my shadow. And the Rebbe was responding, you can't elevate a shadow because it has no substance of its own. So there are two types of darkness. There's a darkness that has no substance of its own. Clearly this chassid was not such a dark individual. But there's a darkness that does have substance. So this chassid thought that the Rebbe could elevate him. But the Rebbe was saying, listen, your darkness doesn't have substance and it can't be elevated. You can only elevate something that has substance. So bottom line is, darkness, ultimately, even though there are two opinions, ultimately it's like two dimensions of darkness. And in that sense, we can also understand what it means that God regretted that he created the Yetzer Hara. What does that mean, as I said? You regret it, so don't create it. God didn't know he would regret it. I mean, like what's only changed? And then if he regrets it, let him destroy it. Because the creation of the Yetzer Hara is a creation that has to be built in inherently, that it's one of regret. So the regret is not like we would say, oh, I did something and then I made a mistake. It doesn't say in the Talmud God made a mistake. He says he regrets it. Why?
He regrets it was necessary.
What God is saying is essentially, I'm creating a Yetzer Hara, but I'm not creating for you to follow it, I'm creating for you to transform it. So if God didn't regret it, it would just be an entity that remains stuck in its place. In other words, it's an entity that has within it the nature of being something that was that is regretfully there. The way the expression is explained sometimes in Hasidic thought, it goes like this: the Tzimtzum, the great darkness that God used to conceal the divine presence and allow existence to be, is Tzimtzum B'Shvil Ha'er, it's called. In other words, the Tzimtzum, the darkness, is not concealment, is not an end in itself. It's only meant to reveal a deeper light. So, there's an expression that the Tzimtzum is Hepech HaKavana. The Tzimtzum is against God's will. God regrets making the Tzimtzum. What that means, so why'd you do it? Because he created it in a way that it should point us that it should be broken. That's what means regret. So when God creates something and then later regrets it, he's simply saying he's giving us this power to transform it. So there are things that God creates the way they are, that's the way they should remain. And there are things that are the way they are meant to be transformed. That's what the regret means. So in that context, you say, therefore, that, for instance, to use an example, a father hides from his child in order for the child to elicit the child's ingenuity to find the father. Now the father hid so well that this child stops searching, goes off doing his own thing. So the whole point of the concealment was only to reveal. So the father says, I regret hiding. He doesn't regret his original intention. His reason for hiding was that the son should find her. But he regrets the result, that what happens if a person doesn't end up searching. So in that context, the purpose of the concealment is never meant really to be. The purpose is meant to be a regretful purpose, and that the child should not buy in to the concealment and realize that there's something deeper here. It's called shivrei b'tzidai, that there's things that are created initially for them to be destroyed or to be broken. So when you think about your dark side, your ugly side, you have to understand that besides the fact that we all have a good side that is more powerful, the ultimate purpose is to use even your darkness for good things. Now how you do that requires a little analysis. Each of us have certain strengths. Sometimes those strengths get caught up in unhealthy things. That doesn't mean there isn't strength. Remember, the most atrocious of things that a person can do comes from some type of passion. I think I mentioned last week, people who get serious addictive personalities are very passionate people. Mediocre or complacent people don't get addicted, they don't get obsessed with anything. So obsession and any type of compulsion is a very powerful energy. Unfortunately, what happens is it's not channeled, it's not focused, so it goes off the wrong direction and can become destructive, very destructive. The key is to learn to take the dark side of your life and turn it into something positive. You have another expression of regret when it says, by the time of the second temple, it says God destroyed the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. There was an inclination. People had a temptation to serve idols. I don't know what that temptation was. Maybe it's maybe our temptation of like having money is a form of idol worship. Maybe something like that. But then God destroyed that temptation. So then he went a step further and said, you know what? Let's destroy the temptation for lust, sexual temptations, which will eliminate all the other sins. No idolatry, no sexual indiscretions. Life is almost perfect. What happened was, the Talmud says, when he destroyed that the lust, it says the chicken stopped having eggs. Basically, there was no motivation for people to mate. So God returned the Yetzer Hara for sex, for sexuality, basically. So what do you see from that? You see from that there's where you see an example where good and evil all come into one. Sexuality from a Torah point of view is a holy force. The Ramban writes it's not something to be ashamed of or ugly or dirty, which is also, by the way, since we're making comparative discussions tonight between Christianity and Judaism, Judaism does not see sexuality as a necessary evil or as some type of remnant left over from the tree of knowledge. As a matter of fact, where in Christianity celibacy is considered optimal, the Pope, the priests, even though if you Google it, you'll find that the reason the priesthood is celibate is actually a real estate issue rather than a sanctity issue. Because in the Middle Ages, the children of priests were demanding the titles and the deeds to the buildings that their parents built, the churches. So they eliminated the whole idea of having children, celibacy. That way, no priest could have children. Even if he did, they can't claim that it's his child.
So you won't admit it.
Right. Okay. But celibacy, in Judaism, a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, a king, a leader, cannot be celibate. Moshe Rabbeinu, Resh Sanhedrin. You have to be, because sexuality is a gift of God. It can be distorted, yes. All powerful things can be distorted. As a matter of fact, the more powerful something is, the more damage it can do. The commentaries explain why is, for example, forbidden to eat blood. So the Torah says in pysche, it says, "Ki adam hu hanefesh." You shall not eat blood. That's why we salt meat and all kinds of other things. So a question I was asked, a simple question. All food that we eat, after it's digested, breaks down into our bloodstream. The whole point of it is to break it. So why not just eat blood in the first place? You don't even have to break it down. I'm not saying it's very delectable option. So it says, the Torah says, "Kedam hu hanefesh." Yes, dam, blood, is a life force. And as a life force, because it has so much power, it also gathers negative energy. The concept of tumah, impurity in Torah, is essentially, very simply explained, it's spiritual impurity. Where do bacteria gather? Where does infection fester? Wherever there's nourishment. You'll never find infections in an arid, dry area. You'll only find it where there is a lot of nourishment. That's why, God forbid, in a surgical room, you have to sterilize everything, because when you open up the internal organs, that's where they become more and more sensitive to any type of infection. When the body is closed up, thank God we have skin, hair. We have many layers that protect from most bacteria entering or damaging anything inside of us. So that's actually, the more power something has, the more the other side, the negative side, comes to glean energy from. So for instance, the Jigan and Schuchmacher were Yiddish comedians. They were actually linguists. So they go, the Yiddish theory of relativity goes like this. The 3 hairs on your head are not much, but 3 hairs in your head are not much, but 3 hairs in the soup? That's a Yiddish theory of relativity. It's all relative. So a piece of dust on your finger is nothing, but that same piece of dust on your eyeball is very irritating. Why were you not allowed to go into the Holy of Holies all year round? Why was it concealed? Not because there's something ugly or ashamed. On the contrary, it's the holiest place on earth. Because the holiness is so powerful that even one blemish would not be tolerable, like one piece of dust on the eyeball. Ravav al beged shel talmid chacham. A piece of dust on the clothing of a talmid chacham, of a great scholar, was considered to be a disgrace. For most of us, it's not such a big thing. It's all relative. So the same thing is, wherever there's a lot of kedusha, holiness, there's always potential for a lot of tumah, which is one of the reasons that in Judaism, one of the most regulated areas is sexuality. The laws of the mikveh, the laws of nida, all the dinim, all the laws around sexuality. Why? Because sexuality is maybe the most potent force in life. But all potency can go 2 ways. It can recreate life and bring the most powerful beauty into this world, or it can destroy life. The Holy of Holies. So the same thing is with our own so-called dark side, as I mentioned, ugly side, which is often connected to sexual fantasies and sexuality. It has two sides to it. There's one side of it that takes on a shape that is absolutely should be discarded. But the energy of it is a very healthy one. You have to learn how to channel it. And when you learn how to channel it, you transform the dark into light. That's the story of Chanukah, and that's the story of Joseph, who from the depths, from the pits of the prison, becomes the king. And that's the story also of this evening. So the Chassidim, as I said, tonight they play chess, or they talk about chess. As a matter of fact, there is a interesting talk that the Rebbe delivered once about the lessons that we learn from chess. So this doesn't mean that it's a night where we are overcome by the darkness. It just means that you have to learn to respect and to transform darkness into light. And in that context, we all have examples for it in our own personal lives. I discussed earlier that it's not just personal today, it's also collective. We're living now in a darker time. Economically, we're seeing some of the worst of human nature come out in this whole economic crisis. What was it? Yesterday, a guy killed himself because of the Madoff scandal. I'm sure there'll be other fallout, hopefully with a minimal amount of damage, but it's a darker time. It could be looked at as being, it's not fair, and other people are criminals, or it could be looked at a time of introspection, and maybe it's time to get our act together and learn to transform our lives. That's really what would be the only redeeming factor. So it's not just that good prevailing over evil, but it's actually redemption when you learn how to transform. You look at the negatives and say, what does it teach us? Unfortunately, there's a side of me that thinks that people are not going to learn. And everyone's thinking, okay, this will soon be over, and then, like recessions in the past have happened, and we bounce right back and learn nothing and just go back till the next scandal breaks. I'd like to believe, however, that there is a side to many of us that will maybe be transformed. Maybe this is a paradigm shift, and maybe it's an opportunity for something new to happen. What happens to the collective whole, I don't know if it's in our control, but what happens to us is in our control. So, our challenge is, and this is on the fourth night of Chanukah, the lesson, we have the power to not just vanquish darkness, but to transform it. To look into the darkest parts of our lives, even when things are going terrible, there is redemption in that. You have to know how to find it. You have to often have a person that can help you find it. Because a person who's in the dark pit cannot free themselves, because you're too subjective. Just like you can't pull yourself out of a pit on your own. Someone has to throw you a rope. One of the Rebbes once asked the question, why do we have this part of the ear? This part, To hear sounds, even if you didn't have the section here, you'd hear the sounds. So maybe science explains it's like an amplifier, it amplifies it. And this Rebbe answered, the reason you have it, he said in Yiddish, he said, and in case somebody falls into the mud, you can pull him out. You get his ears and you pull him. Which was always like, when we were kids in school, there were the guys that always twisted your ears, like that type of thing. So, which means you can't pull yourself out by your ears, as they say. Someone else has to pull you out. So in times of darkness, we need each other. And we need to turn to each other. And it's often the people that have gone through the fire that are the best people who can teach us things. I see this time and again. So I want to say on this evening, little night, fourth night of Chanukah, Pysche Mikates, and many other elements. Tonight is also the night of Wednesday night, which is on Wednesday, the two luminaries, the Moir HaGodl and Moir HaKatan, were placed into the heavens, which is the sun and the moon, which are also two types of light. One is a light of light, and one is a light that comes out of darkness, which is the moon. That we should all learn and use the strength of Chanukah to pierce the darkness. The power of Chanukah, as the Ramban says, powerful words in the beginning of Parsha Ba'aleischa. So it says that, remember, the Chanukah candles, they came to do, was to commemorate the menorah in the temple. But here's the interesting irony. The menorah in the temple does not shine today, because the temple was destroyed, and there's no longer a menorah there. It was taken into captivity. So the Ner Tamid that used to burn every day in the temple all day and all night, no longer burns today. But Haneres Halalu, that's the Ramban writes, Nachmanides writes this, Haneres Halalu, the lights of Chanukah, Einem B'Telem La'elam, never were extinguished. That even when the temple was destroyed and the menorah no longer was lit, kindled, we still began lighting every year. Chanukah remained with us. So it's interesting. The Chanukah came as a result of the menorah in the temple. You'd always think, Sibah Mesubov, that the effect cannot be stronger than the cause. If the cause was the menorah in the temple, how could the result be stronger than the cause? But nevertheless, that's a perfect example how darkness creates greater light than light does. Because the menorah in the temple burned even in good times. As a matter of fact, it was the Greeks and the Syrians, when they defiled it, to stop burning. They had the power to extinguish the menorah. And then the Romans extinguished it for good until Mashiach comes. But Chanukah was not born in good times. It was born in dark times. Chanukah was discovered when things were not well, and there was no oil, or a little oil, and still it burned. These flames lasted with us through the Middle Ages, through the Crusades, and through the pogroms, and through the Inquisition, and through the Holocaust. And if stories of how Jews went to farthest lengths to find some crucible, some oil, machine oil, whatever, to light something in the concentration camps. I mean, it doesn't get more insane than that. And today we have, of course, the blessing to be able to light menorahs publicly, privately, Statue of Liberty, anywhere we want. What a blessing. But this flame was carried through generations when it was very dark. So when you look at the flames tonight or tomorrow night, listen to the flames, as one of the Rebbe says, you have to listen to what the flames tell us. And one of the things they tell us, that you cannot extinguish us. We will burn through everything. We burn through the light times and through dark times. So what better example of light is there today? That even the temple itself does not burn, the menorah in the temple. But as the Rambam says, these lights will never be extinguished, which is one of the reasons it says when Mashiach comes, even though some holidays may not longer be, because they're Shaga B'tira, or whatever the explanation is, because they'll be elevated into higher holidays. But Chanukah, it says, will continue. One of the reasons is for this reason, because Chanukah is a power of invincibility that's only possible when you come through the darkness. That's the power of Chanukah. So if you need a lesson, especially in these times, and these are hardly the worst of times, even though for some it may be difficult, and I'm not minimizing that, but we're not dealing here with life and death, we're dealing here with economics, and so on. So a wake-up call it is. So may your lights and your souls burn, show their invincibility, that nothing can extinguish it if you want to be so. Even furthermore, not only you can't extinguish these flames, they have the power to transform darkness into light. As I said, to take even the dark side of our lives, even the ugliest side, and even there find redemption, find some spark. Like the spark of Chanukah, they found one pysche and one small crucible, and from that turn it into a flaming light that illuminates. And may we all help each other in this regard. And until next Wednesday, I'd like to bid everybody a very happy Chanukah, a very good week. And of course, tomorrow night we have this Gala Chanukah party here tomorrow night. See everybody preparing in there. And if you haven't signed up, I would highly recommend, because it will be sold out. The numbers I get is already almost full. So if you haven't and you want to join, by all means, talk to Belville and just give me your name. And again, happy Chanukah. It was a pleasure and honor, as always. We'll also be announcing our January schedule tomorrow night. We'll give out a calendar for the next month, which is a full week of programming. We're going to add, my brother is going to give a lecture every Tuesday night. Every second Tuesday night is going to be called the Comedy and Kabbalah of Relationships. And I will continue Wednesday. There'll be Tuesday the Kabbalah of Cooking. Philip will do Thursdays. Not tomorrow night, but after Philip will resume January 1st. And my son Mendel will be doing also Thursdays for the younger crowd. Like all of you, except me. That is. Now, this class was dedicated by our good friend Mark Walensky in honor of his great uncle's Yahrzeit, Alta Ben Moshe, on the 23rd of Kislev, right before Chanukah. And thank you, Mark, being a help and a support and a pillar. And if anybody wants to sponsor a class or in any way sponsor anything we're doing, feel free to speak to me or to Belleville. And with that, I bid you all a good night. And as I said, I will be here next Wednesday night, even though it's New Year's. So what better time to have a class, right? Good night, everybody.
Good night.